Good morning. Thank you for joining South Church today as we celebrate the founding of our nation and begin this summer's exploration of the theme of change. My name is Jonathan Cummings, and I'm one of a team of worship associates that assist with creating and providing services for South Church. As always, there are a number of contributors that help to bring these sermons to you. Today's music is provided by Susan Adams and Greg Burdwood, and our time for all ages comes from Kirsten Hunter. Jen Leiden fulfilled the essential task of video editing for our service. Today's sermon is offered by Jennifer Whitten. Jennifer has an impressive background with experience in instruction, tutoring, and owning Roots and Wings writing service, through which Jennifer has applied systems thinking to aid nonprofit organizations, assist with conflict resolution, and provide restorative justice. I'm sure.
The South Church Spiritual Book Group is hosting a discussion of Inheritance, a memoir of genealogy, paternity, and love by Danny Shapiro on Wednesday, July 14th at 7 p.m. All are welcome. Please contact South Church Book Group at gmail.com for the Zoom link. For more than 10 years, the First Sunday Chanting from Different Traditions has been meeting on the front steps of the church in the summertime. Join us on Sundays, July 4th, August 1st, and September 5th at 9 a.m. All are welcome to join voices outside. For more information, contact Kathy Okeisen at kathomusic@gmail.com. Join us as we practice and discuss mindfulness at the new weekly South Church Mindfulness Meetup. If you're interested in mindfulness, but not sure where to start, an experienced meditator seeking a support group, or anything in between, let's practice together. Online on Tuesdays from 10 to 11 a.m., beginning July 6th, each group will begin with a 30-minute guided meditation, followed by a facilitated discussion. To join the email list and for the Zoom link, please contact Kalyana Bliss at kalyanabliss8@gmail.com. Please note that we will not have an online social hour after worship today. We hope that you have a wonderful holiday weekend.
We would be one in building for tomorrow, a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which bends our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
Change is scary is an aphorism people seem to accept. I had a recent experience that made me view this aphorism in a new light. Sometimes the world changes around us. Other times the world is the same, but it is we who are not. From the age of 18 to 34, I lived at my parents' home in Vermont, my college dorm room in Oberlin, Ohio, a hostel in Australia, my future wife's dorm room in Gambier, Ohio, an attic in Columbus, moved to British Columbia, moved back to Vermont, had a moving truck packed, ready to go to move to Southern Illinois, and instead lived in my parents' home again with my wife for 6 months, lived in Dover, New Hampshire while doing a PhD and working in Vermont, lived half-time in West Virginia and half-time in New Hampshire, spending 2 weeks in each place, worked from home full-time despite my office being located in Maryland. Side note, that this was 2016, so well before the pandemic. Moved to Nottingham and took a job in New Bedford, Massachusetts, which I commuted to once a week. In short, I've been some places and done some things. I seek out adventure. I imagine, giving this description I just gave, if I told you the character in this story was offered a job that would take them to Australia again, you'd say, yeah, that fits. I wonder what they'll do there. Well, I'm not moving to Australia. I could have, and I chose not to. It turns out I want my adventure to come without more boxes now. It isn't that Australia has changed or become less appealing as a place. Surprisingly to me, I've changed. Here, the place I know, with a home I have equity in, with a soil I have fruit trees in. Side note again, I can't wait to eat the first apple I've grown myself this fall. With trails, the dogs, and I know well, and a community I've helped to build and craft. Those are now the adventure that I seek. As we light today's chalice, here are some words associated with personal change. First, I didn't quite think this quote qualified, but the more I looked, the more I circled back to it. I hope it feels fitting for you as well. Always follow your heart. Unless it's been broken, then you must lead it. Back into love, back into the universe. Mike Dooley. Please join me in reciting and practicing our mission statement. At South Church, we nurture spiritual growth through worship, learning, and community. We celebrate the worth and dignity of all people, and we inspire one another to act on our faith in the larger community.
Good morning. I'm going to share our time for all ages this morning from my garden because we are beginning a summer exploration on the idea of change and how we are a community of change. And I cannot think of a better place to start than in a garden, because things are changing all the time in a garden. The blueberries right now are changing from green to blue. And boy, are they delicious. My daylilies are blooming right now. Daylilies change over the course of just one day. The buds open, they bloom, and by the next day, they're wilted and dying. The tomatoes are changing a lot too. None of them are red yet, But these itty bitty flowers are turning into small fruits, growing up into plump fruits, and soon they'll be turning red and ready to eat. One of my favorite plants is kale. I don't know if you like to eat kale, but kale is one of my favorite foods. And I have some kale growing in my garden. This is one of the plants that's doing really well. I actually even have some kale. I'm going to move this camera over to show you from last year. That's this kale right here. And I let it stay because it's making seeds. I'll show you that. You see those? All of these pods are filled with kale seeds. And I'm going to let them dry out because it rained. They're all kind of wet. But they're just about ready to harvest. And then I can hold those seeds and use them to plant my kale for next year. Isn't that amazing? So many seeds. And the kale is actually what I want to talk about related to change. Because change happens in the garden all by itself, like we've been looking at, right? Sometimes we have to change our expectations in a garden too. And that actually is pretty good practice for learning how to change our expectations in other parts of our lives. So I'm going to show you an example of what I mean. If you look down here, do you see this little plant right here? This little guy is a baby kale plant. And that baby kale plant should look just like this one over here, but it doesn't. And the reason is somebody is finding their way into my garden through my fence, and they've actually taken 2 baby kale plants of mine and eaten them so much that I don't think they're gonna live. So we're talking about change, and in this case, a change in plans. My garden changes all the time. It goes from seed to plant to flower to fruit to seed again. And sometimes the best laid plans of which plants are going to grow don't work out. If our plans don't work out, it's always okay to feel frustrated, to feel disappointed, sometimes to feel sad, sometimes to be really, really sad. But if we can figure out a way to change our plans, to adjust, sometimes those changes can turn into something good. Today, I am going to plant something in the place of those 2 baby kale plants that didn't make it. There's not a lot of choices in a garden this time of year because in New England it gets cold and not lots of plants do really well in the hot heat and can come to fruit by the time the cold weather arrives. But there is one. There is something called a bush bean, a bean plant, and that's what I'm going to put in the ground. And beans are going to do something else that's pretty advantageous for this kale that still is growing around the 2 plants that didn't make it. Beans put something called nitrogen in the soil, which is good for the kale. So, a change in my plans may end up giving me an even more healthy and happy kale plant with this one here that made it, and some extra beans to eat sometime in September. I wonder if you can think of some times that you had to change your plans over this past year. Did you think of any ways during all of those changes to make the best of the situation? Did you let yourself feel disappointed and a little sad? Did anything surprise you about how things worked out? I would love to hear about it. We have a big change coming up soon. We're going to be back to in-person church in September, and that is a change too. And that's going to take some adjusting for all of us, and I can't wait to see you. I hope you're having a great summer. Love you.
Hi, this is Patti Frew-Waters, the Executive Director of Seacoast Family Promise. It's really nice to come back and say hello to you all, and mostly thank you to all of you for everything you did during COVID-19. You stuck it out and you stayed with us, and you helped us get through the most difficult time. And it was a scary time. And if you are watching this video, I would like to personally tell you how happy I am that you are still out there. And I'm happy that I'm still here as well. We placed 100% of our families, even during COVID-19. As you know, we purchased the Joshua House for an overnight hosting site. We could have had to close our doors and end this program. It didn't happen. You were marvelous. You donated PPE items and you kept us going. Not one person got COVID here. Everybody was tested, everybody has been vaccinated, and we continue on. We have a full house right now, and who knows what's going to happen down the road. I don't know. I hope we go back to our rotation and I get the chance to see you all again and again and again, but we'll see. In the meantime, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing you now that we're getting back into some personal touching of each other, and have a lovely summer, and keep in touch with us. If you haven't liked us on Facebook, please do that so you can keep up with all the latest news. Thank you.
Today's shared plate offering, as indicated on your screen, can be given using the South Church website. As you just heard, our offering this month is being shared with Seacoast Family Promise. Please give as you are able to help support their mission and to share the opportunities our experience in this nation have provided us with those who need another opportunity to experience them as well.
Oh, we give thanks. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day. For this precious day. We're all gathered here. We're all gathered here. And those far away. And those far away. For this time we share. For this time we share. With love and care. With love and care. Oh, we give thanks. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day. For this precious day.
I welcome you now to our time for prayer and meditation. You can meditate yourself if you'd like, closing your eyes and just listening to the sound of my voice. Or you may take this time to think about and prepare your own prayer for during our water meditation. Whatever means feels most appropriate to you. For myself, for this prayer, to the Great Spirit and the energy that connects us all of life and all of creation and all of being. May those of us who struggle with change, so may all of us find peace and ease, a space for breath, whatever it is that you would wish for. May the difficulties of change feel a little bit less so, and may the possibilities that they provide yield many paths before you and before us all. May it be so. Amen.
Good morning. I'm speaking to you from Star Island, and I begin this sermon with the first half of a poem by Stanley Kunitz entitled The Layers. I have walked through many lives, some of them my own, and I am not who I was, though some principle of being abides from which I struggle not to stray. When I look behind, as I am compelled to look before I can gather strength to proceed on my journey, I see the milestones dwindling toward the horizon and the slow fires trailing from the abandoned campsites, over which scavenger angels wheel on heavy wings. Oh, I have made myself a tribe out of my true affections, and my tribe is scattered. How shall the heart be reconciled to its feast of losses? When I was 10 years old, in the middle of 5th grade, we moved from upstate New York to Virginia. My father had taken a job in the D.C. area. For him, it was a wonderful opportunity. For me, it was misery. I had a beloved 5th grade class. My teacher was genial and interesting and read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe to us each afternoon while we sat on a braided rug listening. My classmates included 4 deaf students and their interpreters, so we got to learn to sing and sign "You Light Up My Life." I was the caregiver for the beloved class garter snake. To top it all off, I was granted the dream opportunity to read announcements in support of the MS Readathon over the school intercom, my earliest activism on behalf of multiple sclerosis research. The moving truck appeared as a gaping darkness that swallowed not only my belongings, but the whole cloth of my life. I was that kid who saved everything. The movers peered into a Gerber baby food jar lined with yellow cotton and exclaimed, "She even saved her baby teeth." But I couldn't pack my school or friends or the big tree outside the living room window where I watched clouds drift and believed I saw the world turning, and take these with me. Around this same time, my great-grandmother died. She had been a touchstone. She belonged to me. We landed in a nice Virginia neighborhood with a stream perfect for creek walking and kids my age. We found a great Girl Scout troop, and unbeknownst to my parents, every night for a year and a half, I cried myself to sleep. How shall the heart be reconciled to its feast of losses? My mantra from then on was, I hate change. Until, at age 16, I discovered the 11th chapter of the Tao Te Ching. 30 spokes share the wheel's hub, that chapter reads. It is the center hole that makes it useful. Shape clay into a vessel. It is the space within that makes it useful. I started to wonder, are there uses for all these holes inside of me? Are there uses for the holes inside us all? I'm not someone who believes that everything happens for a reason, nor that God or the universe doesn't give us more than we can handle. Sometimes the universe doles out more loss and difficulty than we can handle with anything approaching equanimity. One friend incurred mental illness that became permanent disability from the physical and non-physical impacts of serving in the U.S. military. Another friend who was transgendered took her life after facing discrimination in employment and being physically attacked. When I was in my 30s, 22 people I knew died in 18 months. I remember calling my grandmother and saying, "Grandma, this isn't even a country with war on its own soil. How much suffering is the human heart supposed to take?" And my grandmother, known by all in her community as deeply loving and always encouraging, replied honestly, "Wait till you're old and all your friends are gone." So it is not that I want holes in my life, or any lives, as openings to use or virtue, but it has been my experience that how we continue most often comes out of how we use and make meaning with and for what happens to us. If we are going to have those holes, what uses may we find for them? As Viktor Frankl, psychiatrist, Holocaust survivor, and author of Man's Search for Meaning, wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. A human being is a deciding being." 30 spokes share the wheel's hub. It is the center hole that makes it useful. How might a hole in our being move us forward along our journeys? Shape clay into a vessel. It is the space within that makes it useful. What can we now hold that we could not hold before? When I worked as a hospice chaplain, the usefulness of the holes inside me was suddenly illuminated. Most of my patients had Alzheimer's or dementia. I did not have much experience with these illnesses beyond a brief training, and I never knew who or how my patients would be when I arrived, but I loved them tremendously. No matter where they were in the course of their disease, even when they were in pain, with all the loss they and their families sustained, I came away from each visit feeling grateful for their beauty. Except for one woman, Mary. I had been told by our volunteer coordinator that Mary's volunteer had become too depressed by her inability to reach or help Mary and had quit. When I met Mary, I understood. I spoke with her. I tried holding her hand. I asked whether she might like a prayer, to which she whispered hoarsely and vehemently, "No," the only word I heard her speak. I brought the photos from her bureau and held them close in her line of sight. She had been beautiful and vibrant, elegant and adventuresome. Now, at age 75, she was immensely thin, with gray wispy hair and missing teeth. As she looked at these photos of her earlier life, her expression changed. Knowledge came into her eyes. I realized, unlike some of our patients when they reach this stage of the disease, Mary knows. She knew what she had lost. I felt like weeping, and later at home I did. This was cruel of life. This kind of loss was cruelty. Many of you may be familiar with the research on mirror neurons, which allow us to make sense of others' reactions and emotional states. Though Mary barely moved, I could suddenly feel her feelings. She had a friend who visited with his dog, and for him she would turn and eat. I knew she could still receive, but I did not know what or how to give. I had begun to learn to read her and her body language, very slight variations of movement or expression. They told me that sheer accompaniment and presence meant little, if anything, to her. She turned her face away. I was thrust down into the hole inside me, the one that had lost so many people, so many loves. It felt empty in there at first. It felt cold and lonely. The emptiness was overwhelming. I found myself singing Amazing Grace, but with the lines unfinished. I once was lost, but now, What? And I remembered that her room contained many CDs. The next time I visited the memory care residence where Mary lived, I found her sitting in her wheelchair in the garden room. She was staring at nothing. I sat down and I started to sing. As I sang Amazing Grace, she lifted her head and turned toward me. Her gaze, usually vague, had a sudden intense focus. Tears came into the corners of her eyes. One ran down her cheek. We did not take our eyes off one another for the full hour that I sat there and sang. I could not wait to visit her again. Each time she became alert, alive, awake, and she woke me up. I sang. I played her a 7-minute Ella Fitzgerald video on my phone screen while she watched intently. Now, when I would talk with her, she would more than tolerate me. I knew she had loved France, and I found her a massage volunteer who was French, who could gently tend her body. On their introductory visit, I brought over a photo from the bureau. Her volunteer said, "Oh, wait, I recognize these gargoyles. Do you think they could be?" And she named a cathedral. Mary, who had not spoken in months other than to say no, whispered hoarsely, "It could be." In his song Anthem, Leonard Cohen famously sings, "Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." I love that song. I love that the light gets us into us through our imperfections. But I want to add to it, there is a hole in everyone, in every one of us, and that's where the light comes out. Even in our darkest moments, our light may reach another. Viktor Frankl said, "What is to give light must endure burning." He also said, "The salvation of man is through love and in love." Stanley Kunitz's poem, The Layers, concludes this way. In a rising wind, the manic dust of my friends, those who fell along the way, bitterly stings my face. Yet I turn, exulting somewhat, with my will intact to go wherever I need to go, and every stone on the road precious to me. In my darkest night, when the moon was covered and I roamed through wreckage, a nimbus-clouded voice directed me, "Live in the layers, not on the litter." Though I lack the art to decipher it, no doubt the next chapter in my book of transformations is already written. I am not done with my changes. Mary's light illuminated and still illumines me. In her presence, the losses of homes, family members, and friends, the irrevocable changes receded. She was the only person who mattered. Her life was not easy, and she was love. We both were love. We were conduits and energy. We were still creating. We are not done with our changes.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts till we are together again. As we wind down our service today, I offer this July 4th meditation written by Maureen Caloran, who coincidentally has served congregations in many locations over the last 30 years, including Ohio and British Columbia. Spirit of life and love, I come before you, black and brown and red and yellow and alabaster. I come longing for the simpler days that truly never were our lot, and I am an American. Hear these voices, as in the complexity of our days. I am humanist and Christian, Muslim and Jew, pagan and atheist and Buddhist and you, and I am an American. I am one who fought for my country, and I am one at the same time who protested war, and I am an American. Amongst the divisions of our days, I've struggled in poverty, and I've accepted the profits of wealth, and I am an American. I am the owner of weapons, and I am one who would control our nation's guns by limiting the who's and what's and how's, and I am an American. As light is shown on our divisions, I live with often unacknowledged privilege, and I am moved to rage at the complexity of intersecting oppressions, and I am an American. In the challenge of our days, I am the one who supports my country, right or wrong, and I am one who claims the traditions of dissent, and I am an American. In this polarized season, I am Democrat and I am Republican, I am Libertarian and I am Independent, I am green and I am confused, and I am an American. Spirit of hope, sit with us in our diversities. Help us hear one another in our divisions. Grant that, beginning in this community, we may honor one another's truths and know that a just and faithful tomorrow begins here in our hearts. For with all our problems, with all our pain, with all our limitations and mistakes, we are Americans.